and an expert. We've spoken to her before on other topics. Davelle Morrison is a broker for Bosley Real Estate. Thanks a lot for coming in.
Thanks for having me again.
This has received a certain amount of press here in the Toronto area. Explain what blind bidding is. I guess that's the way that most viewers who have purchased homes would have done it.
Absolutely. So with blind bidding, people are told the number of offers that are existing. They're just not told what's in those offers. So they essentially have to guess how much they want to offer on the house.
Mm-hmm. And is that sounds good for sellers?
It's great for sellers, yes.
And what is the pushback that we're seeing from on that system?
Well, I think people want to make sure they have choice. They want to make sure that it doesn't become overregulated, that it's something that we're forcing sellers to do. It's the seller's home. They should be able to choose how they want to do it. Mm-hmm. So now there is choice. If the seller chooses to open up that bidding practice, it can be open. Now, for me, I would generally advise a seller, don't open it up until you get to a point where maybe some of the offers are so close that they need to actually see that they're so close and that you're not trying to pull their chain, essentially.
Well, and why not? Why not open up the process earlier on?
I don't think it's in the seller's best interest. So, I mean, at the end of the day, if I'm representing the buyer, I'm going to say one thing. If I'm representing the seller, I'm going to say something else. And so I don't think it's in the seller's best interest. Now, that being said, I have seen a couple of the open offer processes that have happened recently. I think people were hoping that it would take the wind out of the sails in the market and bring the prices down. But I don't think that's actually happening. And I think if you look at other markets where they do have open bidding, New Zealand, Australia, it's not to say that those real estate markets are down. Those housing prices are still high, just like ours are. So I think that at the end of the day, I think people hope that this open offers is going to solve that problem of, high prices on real estate. But I think that the only thing that's going to solve it is sort of going back to basic economic theory of supply and demand.
Mm-hmm. Rebecca.
Yes, so I'm just, curious as to, based on the conversations you've been having with colleagues or, other people in the sector, would you say most realtors are for or against this? And I guess my thinking is, I know a few years ago when, House Sigma was, publishing sale prices, one of the benefits of using a realtor is to be able to get access and expertise information that you wouldn't be able to find as a regular consumer. So, if the bidding process is now more transparent than it was before, does that, require less need of a realtor or an agent, that you're working with, or do you think consumers will feel empowered to do this on their own and forego, the realtor?
I think that there's still a negotiation strategy which buyers still need help with, and I think that is where the realtor comes in. So, with the House Sigma that you mentioned, you don't have to have me to give you the sale prices of how much something sold for, and that's okay. But to me, it's the advice that you're looking for. To me, it's the advice of you should go in high, you should go in low. This is what the other houses have sold for. These are how many offers there have been, and so therefore you really need to offer this versus that. So I think that's the expertise that people rely on with their agents. So regardless of whether the offers are open or closed, I still think that there is a need for expertise. So for example, I had an agent in my office actually talk about this open bidding process that he'd gone through. And, for him, his clients had offered one thing, but they only had 2 rounds to actually improve their offer. And so knowing that, then you still have to think quite strategically about how much you're going to bid on the price.
It's been a while since the federal government announced the changes to the capital gains tax exemptions. What are people in your industries saying now that they've had a period to digest this news?
People are not liking it. In fact, I've gotten quite a few people from my last conversation with you here who have also expressed not liking it. I think it's really interesting that they chose not to make it as a part of the regular budget last week. I think that's kind of curious. I think it's really curious that the leader of the Conservative Party has essentially not said anything about it.
Yeah.
The Conservative Party used to be about people who I think had money. And now I think in order to win, they're trying to come across as, oh no, we're the everyman party. Mm-hmm. So I think that's a little bit troubling because a lot of people said, okay, well, maybe I'll just hold on to my property until the Conservatives come in. And then when the Conservatives come in, they'll get rid of the capital gains tax. Mm-hmm. But because Pierre Poilievre has said nothing, we really don't know.
What's it mean to cottage owners?
Well, I mean, it's interesting. You know, I've been watching a lot of cottage countries and cottage country real estate, and they have been saying that the number of listings has spiked in cottage country, partly because of this, but partly also simply because interest rates are so high. And there's certainly a lot of people who purchased those cottages on lines of credit back during the pandemic times, so now they're feeling that pinch.
Okay, another thing you said you wanted to talk about, at least briefly, was this. This is a full-page newspaper advertisement taken out by, there we go, by Tom Caldwell, who is, we've interviewed on this channel many, many times. He's a very well-known person in Canadian capital markets. He bemoans the several aspects of contemporary life and public policy here in Canada. What are your thoughts?
I think this ad is incredible. I think it's bold. I think it's amazing that he's taken the time to, spend his own money and put this in print in a number of newspapers. I think it's great. And, I would agree with him. I think what people don't like about giving more money to the government and taxes is then you start to read stories about things like ArriveCan. And it makes people's heads spin. How could you waste $60 million on an app? And I think things like that are making people really, really upset.